The vast, unforgiving wilderness stretched out in every direction, as if the universe was playing a cruel joke on Blake. Not a single hint of civilization anywhere, unless you count rocks as neighbors. Blake had been wandering for what felt like weeks, but his watch assured him it was only days. Not that it mattered much. His supplies were dwindling, and his hope was circling the drain faster than his last space ration meal. His spacecraft had crash-landed on this no-name planet, leaving him stranded with nothing but endless barren landscapes and a sky that had more mood swings than a teenager. To make things worse, his body ached from the crash, and exhaustion clung to him like a needy ex. Blake had no clue this world was far from deserted. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, dramatic shadows over the jagged cliffs and rocky plains, the kind of scene you'd expect a villain to emerge from, all Blake could think about was surviving the night. His water was almost gone, and the temperature was dropping faster than his optimism. No shelter in sight, he begrudgingly prepared to set up camp, grumbling about why he hadn't chosen a nice vacation to Space Hawaii instead. Just as he was about to settle in for a long night of freezing and possibly crying, a strange sound echoed in the distance. It was a low rumble, like the universe itself had indigestion. Blake's heart leaped into his throat as he whipped around to face the noise. At first, nothing but shadows and rocks. But then, movement. Huge figures appeared on the horizon, their silhouettes looming like bad news on a Monday morning. Instinctively, Blake crouched behind a conveniently placed cluster of boulders, his pulse racing. As they drew closer, he could finally make out the details. Giant women. Yup, actual giants, each one at least double his height, striding through the rocky plains like it was a casual stroll through the park. Their skin glowed faintly in the fading light, and their hair flowed behind them like they were starring in an alien shampoo ad. Blake thought to himself, "Great, I crash-land on the one planet where even the women could squish me like a bug." The giants were speaking in a language that sounded like a mix between a deep hum and the purring of a very large space cat. Blake had heard of alien species before, but this was next-level bizarre. They moved with a graceful ease, covering ground faster than Blake could sprint, which, let's be honest, wasn't saying much. Suddenly, one of them paused. Her head tilted slightly, her glowing eyes narrowing as if she had a sixth sense for detecting stray humans. Blake's heart skipped several beats as she locked her gaze directly onto him. "Oh no, oh no, oh no," he muttered, trying to make himself as small as possible behind his pathetic rock shield. But it was too late. In one swift, terrifyingly graceful motion, she reached down and plucked Blake off the ground like he was an action figure she found under the couch. Her hand, though gigantic, was surprisingly gentle as she lifted him up to her face. Blake dangled helplessly in her grasp, his feet kicking uselessly in the air. Her enormous eyes focused on him, glimmering with curiosity, and maybe a touch of amusement. "A human," she mused, her voice low but musical, almost like a lullaby. If lullabies were delivered by beings that could crush you with one hand. Her lips curled into a smile. How unexpected! Blake's brain short-circuited as he tried to process the absurdity of the situation. "Please," he stammered, his voice shaking, "I don't mean any harm. I'm just lost." The giantess tilted her head, studying him like he was a particularly interesting bug. "You're lost, aren't you?" she asked, her tone almost sympathetic. Blake nodded, panic and confusion swirling inside him like space debris in a black hole. "My ship crashed. I don't know where I am." She exchanged a look with one of her giantess pals, who was now standing beside her, equally intrigued by the tiny human in their grasp. The second giantess raised an eyebrow, her luminous eyes sparkling. "He could be the one," she said in a voice that had the same deep, resonating hum, like a well-tuned space bass guitar. Blake gulped. "The one what?" he muttered under his breath, silently cursing his luck. Whatever was coming next, he had a feeling it wasn't going to be a peaceful nap under the stars. Blake's mind raced as he dangled in the colossal hand of the giantess. The conversation between the two giants was in a language he couldn't even begin to understand, but the tone seemed filled with a mix of curiosity and, he hoped, a hint of empathy. The second giantess, who had approached with an air of intrigue, peered at him with eyes that were almost too large to be real. Blake could see every tiny detail in those glowing orbs, the shimmering reflections of the twilight sky and the faintest hint of a mischievous glint. It was like being inspected by a pair of sentient nightlights. "Well, this is just perfect," Blake muttered to himself, trying to ignore the looming sense of impending doom. I crash land on an alien planet and get picked up by a couple of very tall, very curious women. What's next? A space circus. The giantess holding him, whose name he still didn't know but who was apparently the more authoritative of the two, seemed to be making decisions with an air of practiced nonchalance. She gently lowered him to her side, where he could see the intricate details of her shimmering gown that looked like it was woven from stardust and moonbeams. "Stay calm, Blake," he whispered, as if the very act of talking to himself would make him less of a tiny, terrified speck in the grand scheme of things. The giantess, who had been inspecting him with a kind of bemused curiosity, finally spoke. "We must consult the oracle," she said, her voice rumbling like distant thunder. Blake's heart skipped a beat. The word oracle sounded about as comforting as tribunal or interrogation. The two giants exchanged a few more words, and Blake couldn't help but notice that their discussion seemed to involve a lot of gesturing toward the horizon. It wasn't long before they started moving, their strides so graceful and effortless that they seemed to glide over the rocky terrain. Blake, held securely in the massive hand of the more authoritative giantess, bobbed up and down like a toy on a roller coaster. As they walked, Blake took in the scenery. Though he'd seen plenty of rocks and crags, the area they were traversing now was even more surreal. Bioluminescent plants cast eerie, shimmering lights across the landscape, making the whole place look like a scene from a particularly whimsical sci-fi novel. After what felt like an eternity of bouncing and jostling, they arrived at what could only be described as a grand, alien temple. It was adorned with glowing symbols and intricate carvings that seemed to shift and change as the light hit them. The air was thick with the scent of something both exotic and vaguely floral. The giantess gently placed Blake on a smooth, stone pedestal at the entrance of the temple. It was just his luck that he found himself on display like some kind of cosmic pet rock. The other giantess, the one who had first suggested consulting the oracle, approached a large, crystalline structure in the center of the temple. She began to chant in that deep, resonating language. Blake, trying to appear nonchalant, dusted off his space suit as best as he could and looked around, hoping for some form of salvation or at least an explanation. His heart raced as the chanting grew louder, and the crystal began to glow with an intense light that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of the giantess's voice. Moments later, the crystal emitted a burst of light, and from it emerged a holographic image of an elderly, wise-looking alien with a beard that looked like it had been borrowed from a space wizard. The image hovered above the crystal, its eyes twinkling with ancient knowledge, or maybe just a sense of amused detachment. "Greetings, Keeper of the Stars," the hologram intoned in a voice that was simultaneously both calming and authoritative. "I sense a visitor from a far-off realm. What is your purpose here?" Blake, still trying to shake off his shock, stepped forward and cleared his throat. Hi. I'm Blake. I crash-landed here by accident. I'm really lost and would appreciate any help you can give me." The hologram's eyes seemed to narrow as it studied Blake with a kind of amused scrutiny. "A crash-lander, you say? How intriguing. Our world has not seen one of your kind for millennia." The giantess who had been holding Blake shifted her weight, making the pedestal wobble slightly. "What does the oracle say?" she rumbled, her voice like a distant earthquake. The hologram's gaze shifted to her. "The oracle sees potential in this human. He might hold the key to an ancient prophecy, one that could alter the fate of our world." Blake's eyes widened. "Prophecy? Key? What are you talking about?" The hologram's image seemed to smile, or at least, it was doing its best impression of a smile. "Ah, the plot thickens. It seems your arrival may have been more fortuitous than mere chance." Blake swallowed hard. If this was some sort of cosmic joke, it was one with a very high stakes, and he was apparently the punchline. Blake stood on the pedestal, trying to keep his nerves in check while the giantess and the holographic oracle exchanged cryptic remarks. His mind raced through the potential scenarios, none of which included a peaceful return home. If this prophecy involved him in any significant way, he was ready for the most elaborate cosmic prank ever. The oracle's gaze returned to Blake, and for a moment, the ancient alien's holographic eyes twinkled with what could only be described as a mischievous glint. "You see, Blake, our people have long awaited a Starlight Wanderer to fulfill an ancient prophecy. It is said that this individual will bring balance to our world and solve a great crisis." Blake blinked. "Balance? Crisis? Look, I'm flattered and all, but I'm really just a guy who took a wrong turn and ended up in an alien landscape. I'm no hero. The giantess holding him, who had introduced herself as Talia, gave him a bemused look. Oh, but that's the beauty of it, isn't it? Heroes often don't realize they're heroes until it's too late. Blake's jaw dropped. Wait, are you saying I'm stuck here because I'm destined to be a hero? Couldn't this prophecy have waited for someone with a bit more experience? Before anyone could respond, a loud rumbling echoed through the temple. Blake felt his heart skip a beat as he looked around. The ground trembled, and from a hidden chamber behind the crystal, a massive stone door began to open, revealing a staircase leading down into darkness. The oracle's holographic form seemed to shimmer with anticipation. The first trial of the prophecy awaits. Only those who prove themselves worthy can access the ancient knowledge needed to fulfill their destiny. Blake sighed deeply. Great. Just what I needed. A prophecy with trials. Can't a guy catch a break? Talia's voice was gentle, but it carried an edge of determination. The trials are not just about physical prowess. They test your heart, your mind, and your spirit. If you are to help us, you must be prepared. Blake looked up at her with a mix of desperation and determination. All right, fine. Let's get this over with. What's the worst that could happen? As he descended the stairs, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just signed up for a cosmic obstacle course with no exit strategy. The staircase seemed to go on forever, twisting and turning until finally opening into a cavernous chamber filled with ancient artifacts and strange, glowing symbols. The room was dimly lit by bioluminescent fungi that cast an eerie glow. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, much like the one he had been on before, but this one held a large, intricately carved box. It looked like something straight out of a fantasy novel, complete with ornate patterns and a lock that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. A voice echoed through the chamber, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. To unlock the box, you must first prove your worth by solving the riddle of the ancients. Fail, and the prophecy may remain unfulfilled. Blake took a deep breath and approached the pedestal. He examined the box, noting that it had several small slots, each with a different symbol. It seemed to be a puzzle of some sort, and Blake's mind raced through the possibilities. He had always been decent at puzzles, if only he could remember more from that one escape room experience he'd had on Earth. The voice continued, "The riddle is this: I am not alive, but I grow. I don't have lungs, but I need air. I don't have a mouth, but water kills me. What am I?" Blake stared at the symbols on the box, trying to decipher which one might fit the answer to the riddle. The symbols ranged from spirals to geometric shapes, and he couldn't help but feel a bit like he was in a bizarre game show with cosmic stakes. Finally, he had a moment of clarity. "Fire," he muttered, remembering the answer to the riddle. He selected the symbol that most resembled flames and placed it into the corresponding slot. The box emitted a soft, warm glow, and the lock clicked open with a satisfying sound. Blake's heart pounded with anticipation as he lifted the lid of the box. Inside was a small, ancient scroll, covered in the same glowing symbols that adorned the chamber. The voice echoed again, this time with a note of approval. "You have proven yourself worthy of the first trial. The scroll contains knowledge that will guide you further on your journey." Blake carefully picked up the scroll, feeling a sense of accomplishment mixed with lingering anxiety. He glanced around the chamber, wondering what other trials awaited him. As he exited the chamber and made his way back up the stairs, he felt a new determination. If he was going to be part of some cosmic prophecy, he'd do his best to make it out of this with at least a little dignity, and maybe find a way back home along the way. The giantesses awaited him at the top of the stairs, their expressions a mix of curiosity and encouragement. Talia nodded approvingly as Blake approached. "Well done. The first trial is complete. But remember, there are many more challenges ahead. Stay strong." Blake nodded, trying to muster his bravado. "I'll do my best. And if you could maybe point me toward the nearest exit or way home, that would be great." Talia's smile was reassuring, though her eyes held a hint of the unknown. "The journey has just begun. We'll assist you as best as we can, but remember, destiny is often a path you must walk yourself." Blake took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his newfound role settle over him. If this was going to be his life for the foreseeable future, he might as well face it head-on. After all, he'd already survived the first trial. How bad could the rest of it be? Blake adjusted to his new, albeit unwanted, role as the Starlight Wanderer, with a blend of reluctant acceptance and desperate optimism. Talia, the giantess with the air of a cosmic tour guide, led him out of the grand temple and back into the bioluminescent landscape. Her companion, the other giantess whose name he learned was Xera, followed closely behind, her eyes gleaming with curiosity and a hint of mischief. As they walked, Blake marveled at the surreal beauty of the world around him. The glowing flora and the constantly shifting light patterns gave the entire landscape an otherworldly feel, like a psychedelic dream gone wonderfully right. But despite the beauty, the constant sense of being incredibly small in an incredibly large universe weighed heavily on him. "So, what's next on this cosmic scavenger hunt?" Blake asked, trying to break the tension. "Do I need to solve another riddle or fight a space dragon? Maybe dance off with an alien warlord?" Talia chuckled, a sound that was surprisingly musical given her massive size. "The next trial is not quite so dramatic, though it may be equally challenging in its own way. We must journey to the Oracle's Grove, where you will find answers that will guide you further." Blake raised an eyebrow. Oracle's Grove? Sounds like the kind of place where you'd find a bunch of mystical hippies chanting around a campfire. Do they offer any, I dunno, space snacks or a nice relaxing hammock? Xera, who had been silent until now, leaned down to Blake's level with a playful grin. "Oh, we might have a hammock or two, if you're lucky. But the Grove is more than just a place. It's a nexus of ancient energies and knowledge. It will help you understand your role in the prophecy." Blake nodded, trying to look enthusiastic. "Fantastic. Lead the way. Just don't expect me to start any fires or sing any campfire songs." The journey to the Oracle's Grove was, as it turned out, a long and winding one. The landscape shifted from glowing plains to dense forests of towering, alien trees that pulsed with a soft, green light. The trees themselves seemed to whisper secrets to one another in a language that Blake was sure he would never understand. After hours of walking, the trio finally arrived at the grove. It was a breathtaking sight, an expansive, circular clearing surrounded by ancient, towering trees that seemed to touch the sky. At the center of the grove stood a colossal, shimmering tree with leaves that changed color with every breeze, casting a kaleidoscope of lights onto the ground below. "This is it," Talia said, her voice reverent. "The heart of the grove. The place where the ancient energies are strongest. You must approach the great tree and seek out its guidance." Blake swallowed hard, feeling a mix of awe and trepidation. The great tree seemed to hum with a subtle, rhythmic energy that resonated through his entire body. As he approached it, he noticed that the ground around it was adorned with strange symbols and patterns that seemed to glow in response to his presence. The tree's branches swayed gently, even though there was no wind. Blake took a deep breath and reached out to touch the trunk. As his fingers made contact, a wave of warmth and light enveloped him, and the symbols on the ground began to shift and rearrange themselves. A deep, resonant voice filled the air, coming from within the great tree itself. "Welcome, Starlight Wanderer. You have come seeking guidance. What wisdom do you seek?" Blake hesitated, then spoke up. "I'm trying to understand my role in this prophecy. What am I supposed to do?" The great tree's branches shimmered, and a soft, swirling light emerged from the trunk, forming into an image, a star map, with various points of light connected by glowing lines. The image showed different constellations and paths, some of which seemed familiar, while others were entirely alien. "The prophecy speaks of a convergence," the tree's voice explained. "A time when the paths of destiny align to bring balance to our world. You must navigate these paths, uncover the hidden truths, and restore harmony." Blake looked at the star map with a mix of confusion and fascination. "Okay, that's all very poetic and mystical, but do you have any specifics? Like, where do I start? Are there coordinates or a GPS system I should be aware of?" The great tree's light flickered, and the star map zoomed in on one specific location, a distant, shadowy area on the planet that looked like a series of deep, dark canyons. "This is where you must go," the tree said. "The depths of echoes. There you will find the next clue to your journey. But beware, many challenges await, and the path is fraught with danger." Blake's shoulders sagged. "Of course it is. Why would it be easy?" Talia and Xera, who had been observing in silence, nodded in agreement. "We will escort you to the entrance of the depths," Talia said. "But beyond that, you will be on your own." Blake took a deep breath, steeling himself for the trials ahead. "All right then. Let's get this show on the road. And if you have any tips on surviving deep canyons or navigating ancient prophecies, I'm all ears. As he followed Talia and Xera out of the grove and toward the ominous depths of echoes, Blake couldn't help but feel a mix of dread and anticipation. If the first trial had been any indication, his journey was only just beginning.